Hello, and welcome to the Redundancy Matters podcast, helping compassionate HR professionals managing redundancies who want to put people at the heart of the process. I'm your host, June Hogan, a qualified career coach, an outplacement specialist with a background in HR, and founder of outplacement services provider Wildwood Coaching. In this podcast, I'll be sharing my insights and experience from being on both sides of the redundancy table and from my years of experience supporting individuals after redundancy through outplacement support. Welcome to today's episode of Redundancy Matters. I'm June Hogan, a career coach and outplacement specialist with a background in HR. And in today's episode, I'm talking about the important role of empathy in redundancy situations, why it matters, how it differs from sympathy, and how line managers and HR professionals can practice it effectively. I've personally experienced redundancy twice in my career, and I've also managed redundancy processes. And I've seen firsthand the difference that empathy, or indeed the lack of it, can make. So today I'll share insights into how we can approach redundancy with genuine care and support. So redundancy is more than just losing a job. There's a huge amount of emotion that goes with it. People will often experience feelings of shock, anger, anxiety about the future, grief about what they are losing, and the complex emotion of shame, just to name a few of those. Now, shame is particularly complicated. It can make individuals feel less worthy, as though they're to blame for their situation and like there's something wrong with them. And when dealing with the emotions, and shame in particular, what people really need is to feel connection to others, to feel heard, to feel valued, supported, respected. And this is where empathy really comes in. So there is a difference between empathy and sympathy, and it's quite subtle, but yet it makes a huge difference, particularly in these situations. So I'm a really big Brené Brown fan. You can Google her if you haven't heard of her. She has lots and lots of resources on her website, lots of research about empathy in all of her books. I first came across her work in 2015 when I was training to be a coach. I've followed her ever since. And she explains empathy beautifully. She says, empathy is the brave choice to be with someone in their darkness rather than race to turn the light on so that we feel better. So empathy can be difficult and it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And I'll talk a little bit later about the importance of line managers and how they can practice empathy to support people in redundancy situations. But empathy is about really listening and acknowledging someone else's pain, but without trying to fix it. Now, it's normal for us to want to help others, for us to want to kind of make that pain go away. But in a redundancy situation, that kind of approach with sympathy can distance us from the other person's experience as we want to fix things or push that emotion away so that we don't have to connect with that feeling in us. So here's what that looks like in practice. So empathy would be, I can see this is really tough for you, but I'm here to listen and support you. Whereas sympathy might be, oh, I'm really sorry. Well, at least you've been with the company for a long time and, you'll get a big redundancy payout and, I'm sure you'll find something soon. So sympathy comes from a place of kindness and that's well-meaning, but it can kind of unintentionally invalidate someone's feelings. So by saying something like, oh, well, at least you've been with the company for a long time, or you'll find something soon. And as someone who's been on the receiving end of sympathy, and again, very well-meaning, it kind of makes you feel like, oh, yeah, okay, well, yeah, maybe you're right, that I have got some money and yeah, I've got skills and experience and okay, it'll be fine. I'll just stop talking about it now. But people don't really want to be told kind of, look on the bright side when they're in the middle of all of that. First of all, they want to be heard and understood. They want to have the space and the opportunity and the time to talk about the emotion that they're going through. Otherwise, that leads to kind of suppressing the emotion and just being that kind of, oh, keep calm and carry on approach, which is something that I definitely did with both my redundancies, because I felt like, oh, well, I'll just get on with it then. And, you know, I worked in HR, so I should know what to do. So empathy is about really being able to connect with someone. It's being able to be present, to listen to that story, and importantly, not to listen to that story through our own filter. So even if that story or that person's perspective doesn't connect with our own truth and our own experience, it's recognizing that that is different for that individual. So it's honoring that for that person in that situation, this is what's true for them. This is how they are seeing the situation. And that's their view of the world, and that's their experience. And it's about listening without judgment, which is really important. And sometimes empathy can just be silence, giving someone space to think, to feel, and to know you're there with them, but not looking to fix or fill the silence and make things better. Not everyone's comfortable with silence and comfortable kind of holding that space, but empathy can often be in what you don't say as opposed to what you do. Now, Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar, and she identified 4 key attributes of empathy, which Brené Brown further explored in her book, Atlas of the Heart. If you want to go into that in more detail, it's a really great book talking about a range of emotions. So there are 4 attributes of empathy. So the first one is perspective taking, which is about seeing the situation through someone else's eyes. Then staying out of judgment, so resisting the urge to critique the problem or solve the problem that's in front of you. Recognizing those emotions, understanding what the other person is feeling. And the 4th one is communicating that understanding. So expressing that you really are listening to what they're saying and acknowledging those emotions. Again, even if they might not be ones which you would necessarily identify with or through your perspective. So empathy doesn't always require kind of, big actions and kind of, well, let me sort this out for you, or let me do this, or let me do that. It can often be about those small, meaningful bits of support that you offer along the way. So here are some ways that HR professionals and line managers can demonstrate empathy in those redundancy conversations. So creating that safe space would be the first one. So allowing individuals to express their feelings without that fear of judgment. Simply saying something like, I'm here to listen. That can go a really long way. Acknowledging their experience and validating their emotions. So something like, I can only imagine how difficult this must be for you. So avoiding phrases like, oh, well, everything happens for a reason. Or, oh, this could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Now, I know there's life after redundancy, and we support people to work through the future and to navigate what that means. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're in that moment, people are not ready to hear those kind of things. Active listening is important, so that genuine kind of understanding, that genuine engagement by maintaining eye contact with somebody, sort of nodding, using that reflective language. So things like, it sounds like you're feeling uncertain about the future, what's on your mind, asking those open questions, encouraging the individual to talk and open up. Because often, and I know this through coaching, that when individuals are given the space and the opportunity to talk through things, they will come to their own conclusions. They are resourceful, they have all they need, and they can work through this, rather than being kind of told what to do and being filled with all those kind of shoulds that can often spring up. And this notion of kind of toxic positivity. Now, encouragement's really important. Timing really matters. But instead of something like, oh, you'll bounce back in no time, you'll be fine. And those kind of at least statements, like I said, at least you had a good payout or whatever. Something like, I know this is a challenging time, or I can see this is challenging for you. Let's talk about how I can support you when you're ready. And recognizing that everyone's different. So something like, what do you need from us right now? Particularly at the end of a consultation meeting, that's a really nice question to ask somebody. There's going to be so much going on in their head, but a simple question like that can really open up what an individual's thinking, and again, lead them to talk to you, which is what you want them to do, about what they might need, rather than assuming what they might need to help them. So I've heard and personally experienced some of those well-intended but kind of unhelpful remarks during redundancy situations. I remember one was saying, well, you work in HR, so you'll find something quickly, you'll know what to do. This kind of assumes that someone's professional background is going to make looking for a job easy. Of course, we know that's not always true. There's a comment that was made to me when it happened for the second time. I remember someone saying, oh, really? Not you again? That's really bad luck. I remember thinking, well, yeah, maybe it is, but that's kind of really not very helpful. So thinking about what not to say, I guess, because some of those statements really invalidate our feelings as opposed to validate what's going on. I love the job that I had, and I wasn't ready to hear any of those things. And that's an example of when people are trying to push you out of your emotions, focusing on moving on and not really wanting to talk to you about what's going on. As I said earlier with the quote from Brené Brown, empathy is a brave choice. It's a difficult choice, and it can be hard for people to practice, which is why we tend to jump into sympathy a lot of the time. So HR professionals really play a crucial role in guiding line managers on how to deliver redundancy news with empathy. And it's something that I overlooked when I was managing redundancy situations. I was focusing on the logistics, on the paperwork, on the legalities, and really not paying enough attention to that. So here are a few things that if you are preparing line managers to go into redundancy consultations that you could have a think about. So providing some training on effective communication, emotional intelligence. It's not necessarily sending them off for a week on a course. For example, I run a workshop. It's a 90-minute workshop where we dig in to help prepare line managers for those meetings, really going beyond the process, thinking about emotion, thinking about what they might do when emotion comes up. As a HR professional, I would think about how you can help your line managers to think about empathy and to think about that emotional intelligence that they're going to need in those situations. And when emotion comes up, and it will do, what they might do and how they might respond. Encouraging line managers to listen and really listen properly, actively listen. So that is listening without the intent to reply, but with the intention to understand. Really sort of taking the pressure off that a line manager has to know everything, making sure that they don't feel that they can wing it. If they don't know the answer to something, they take it away and they come back. But also listening to the individual is really powerful. So if the individual is reacting, and naturally they will, and they're talking a lot about how they feel about the process or the situation or whatever it might be, just listening is really powerful. And it is a way of displaying empathy because you are wanting to understand what's going on for the individual. Helping to validate that what someone's going through, so helping to make them feel heard. And then doing some of that reflection, what they're saying, opening up that space for them to talk and show that you're looking to understand more about what they're going through. Silence, I mentioned before, is a great opportunity to give people the space to think and talk, and then give them some agency over what they need from you. And maybe if they can't articulate that during the meeting, then just giving them the space and the opportunity to come back to you after the meeting, or just saying, what's the one thing that I could do to support you? And really importantly, encouraging those regular check-ins outside of consultation meetings. That's super important, and an opportunity, again, for line managers to connect and to display that level of empathy that they really want to support the individual. Empathy, from my perspective, really is the foundation of a compassionate and people-centered redundancy process. And so hopefully that's given you some insights, some thoughts, some ideas about how you can lead with empathy during these situations and how you can support your line managers to do the same. And so I'll end with this quote from Maya Angelou. I do this at the end of lots of podcasts because I think it's really important, and particularly when we're talking about empathy, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and if you'd like to explore redundancy in more depth, I run a monthly free lunch and learn session with a colleague where we discuss key topics in relation to redundancy and focus on best practice and sharing our insights and experience. You can find the details of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you'll join me next time for the next episode of Redundancy Matters. Thank you so much for listening to the Redundancy Matters podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful. It would mean a lot to me if you would follow, rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, as this helps it reach more people who are managing redundancies. Let me know what you thought, and if you have ideas for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on LinkedIn, June Hogan, and get in touch via my website, wildwoodcoaching.co.uk, where you'll also find more resources to help you manage redundancies. I hope you'll join me again soon for the next episode of Redundancy Matters.